during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking on the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. The chair, clerk, and technical facilitator are responsible for muting and unmuting committee members. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. During any roll call, all panelists will be unmuted briefly. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which their hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak. The name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the board, please send it to the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is public comment, and it looks like we do not have any public comment. The next item is communications, disclosures, and recusals, at which time members of the body should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code. Are there any disclosures or recusals? I see no raised hands, so there apparently are no disclosures or recusals. Next is the minutes of the November 23rd, 2020 regular meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Commissioner Cantrell. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Lemmer. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing no raised hands for corrections, I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands to object, the minutes are approved unanimously. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a review of the schedule of upcoming meetings. We have a regular meeting on January 11th, 25th, and February 8th and 22nd. We have a special working session this Wednesday, December 16th, from 5 until 8 p.m., and that will be a virtual meeting. Okay, next is the public hearings, and I would just note that the heading was not included on the agenda, but we are now moving into public hearings. And first, we will do the consent agenda. It's the custom of the Plan Commission to remove from the agenda those items on which the staff believes an application has had sufficient review to warrant approval with all of the conditions placed upon it by various city departments, and on which the applicant accepts those conditions. And there are no individuals who have registered to speak in opposition to the item tonight. These items are placed onto a consent agenda, and they are addressed at the beginning of the public hearing section of our meeting. Then people who are interested in those items can sign off early should they wish to do so. The rest of the items will be taken up in the regular course of business. Of the items before us today, and we'll also include referrals on this consent agenda, the following are proposed for the consent agenda. Agenda item 2, 3, and 4 for referral. Agenda item 5, 6, 7, and 8 as consent. Agenda item 9 for referral. Agenda items 10 and 11 for consent. Agenda item 13 for referral. Are there any requests for separation of any of those items? Seeing none, I'll read those then into the record. For referral, agenda item 2, Legistar 62642. And also for referral, and that's to January 11th. Then also for referral, agenda item 3 and 4, Legistar number 60914 and 60683. And those are referral until January 25th. Then on the consent agenda, agenda item 5, Legistar 62638, substitute creating 28.022 through 00478 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of property located at 6101 Mineral Point Road, 19th Alder District from MXC District to Commercial Corridor Transitional District. Agenda item 6, Legistar 62314, revised 6101 Mineral Point Road, 19th Alder District, consideration of a demolition permit to allow demolition of an educational facility and consideration of a conditional use in the proposed Commercial Corridor Transition District for a private parking lot to allow an off-site parking facility for the UW-Madison following demolition of a former research facility. Then for conditional use and demolition permits, agenda item 7, Legistar 62601, located at 675 South Whitney Way, 10th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the Commercial Center District for a vehicle access sales and service window to allow construction of a detached grocery pickups facility. Agenda item 8, Legistar 62602, located at 3801 East Washington Avenue, 17th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the Commercial Corridor Transitional District for a vehicle access sales and service window to allow construction for a detached grocery pickup. Then for referral to January 11th, agenda item 9, Legistar 62760, located 2402 through 10 Packers Avenue, 12th Alder District, consideration of a demolition permit and consideration of a conditional use in the Commercial Corridor Transition District for an auto body shop to allow demolition of a storage building at 2410 Packers for expanded parking for the existing auto body shop. Agenda item 10, Legistar 62761, located at 4801 Buckeye Road, 15th Alder District, consideration of a demolition permit to demolish a single-family residence and construct a new single-family residence. And agenda item 11, Legistar 62762, located at 9801 Silicon Prairie Parkway, 9th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the Industrial Limited District for a personal indoor storage facility. And last, agenda item 13 for referral to January 11th, creating section 28.069 to create the Regional Mixed Use District and amending portions of Madison General Ordinances 28.021, 28.6061, and 28.062, and several other ordinances to add relevant provisions related to the newly created RMX district. Do I have a motion on those items? Moved by Commissioner Cantrell. Is there seconded by Commissioner Solheim? Are there any questions or comments? Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands to object, the motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is agenda item 12, Legistar 56393, located at 3285 Nelson Road, Town of Burke. Consideration of a certified survey map within the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction to create 4 residential lots. And we do have a presentation by Tim Parks. Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Plan Commission. The request before you at 3285 Nelson Road, Town of Burke, is a request to create 4 single-family residential lots from an approximately 11-acre parcel located at the intersection of Nelson Road and Sunnybrook Drive. The property is currently developed with 1 single-family residence located on the northerly portion of the property. In short, planning staff has been reviewing this request for approximately 2 years, off and on with the applicant, and we do not believe that the proposal can meet the extraterritorial land approval or land division criteria. Factors that the Plan Commission needs to consider is whether or not the proposed extraterritorial land division maintains the general land development pattern of the area in question, considering lot sizes, traffic generation, access noise, and visual features. And also the land division should not impact the ability for the city to provide public services, install public improvements, or accomplish future annexations, or in the case of the Town of Burke, attachments. Staff has reviewed the request and does not believe that the proposed land division meets the criteria for approval. We feel that the proposed lots are inconsistent with the general land development pattern along and east of Sunnybrook Drive, particularly the proposed flag-shaped lots that are shown on the proposed certified survey map. We are also concerned that the proposed lots could negatively impact the city's ability to extend services to this area and accomplish future attachments between now and when the Town of Burke will attach to the cities of Madison and Sun Prairie and the village of DeForest in October 2036. However, as noted in the staff report, staff recommends that if the Plan Commission believes that the extraterritorial criteria can be met, that the CSM be revised to include 66-foot wide reservations for the potential future extensions of Cami Circle and Rising Sun Road west of Sunnybrook Drive across the property to ensure that opportunities for connectivity and utility corridors are preserved despite the proposed land division. I'd be happy to answer any questions after the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. I will open the public hearing, and we do have 2 registrants. The first is Chelsea Sachs, located at 3285 Nelson Road, Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, in support and wishing to speak. Ms. Sachs.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for allowing us to present and speak to you. Peter and I are a young couple. I'm a teacher's daughter. He's a pastor's son. And we're just trying to establish our roots within Madison. So our main goal a couple of years ago when we purchased this property was to move Peter's family, his parents, into the current home at 3285 Nelson Road, and to build a house for ourselves and to have our brother also build a home. Pete's dad turned 80 this year, and we celebrated it social distancing over a Zoom call. And it's really our goal and indication when we purchased this property just to take care of our family. We're clearly not developers. We don't have a PowerPoint presentation in front of you. It's not our goal to try to convince one way or the other through difficult language or experience in doing so. This is so over our heads, and this ETJ complicates things even further. Throw in an improperly divided land parcel sold to us as 2 units when in fact it was 1. This big pit that was dug by the previous owners for fill, and that now creates a drainage issue. And then an incomplete CSM from 40 years ago from the town of Burke, which included the completion of one of the roads adjacent to our property. I don't really know what end is up. And every time we take another step, there's something else that's kind of in our way. And the fact of the matter is, we want to be extremely cooperative. What I do know is that there's an established subdivision to the east of us that was done in the 70s. And there's also one that's done to the west with flag lots similar to what we've presented or requested. And that was done within the last 5 years. And we have this infill area that's in between those 2 subdivisions that we just would like to develop, not to get rich, but to take care of our family. 2020 was a super rough year for everybody. We get that. And if COVID taught us anything at all, it's really the importance of family and supporting one another. And what we're presenting tonight is simply just to say, we want to be cooperative. We want to take care of our family. And we ask tonight for your support in helping us do that. And excuse our 18-month-old son in the background.
That's fine. Thank you, Ms. Sachs.
Thank you.
The next registrant is Peter Sachs, 3285 Nelson Road, Windsor, Wisconsin. That's interesting. Windsor versus Sun Prairie.
I probably put it in wrong. I apologize.
That's okay. In support and wishing to speak. Mr. Sachs.
Hi. Thank you for hearing us this evening. I don't have a whole bunch more to add to what my wife just stated. I guess the one thing that I wanted to state was, since we bought this property, we have been told for the last 2 years that a plan was forthcoming, and it's difficult because every time that we think that, the city of Madison is going to give us some information as to what we can do to make this, more acceptable, the date keeps getting pushed back. And I guess to what I had understood from a memo Ben Zellers wrote, there still really isn't any idea of what will go on here. And it just makes it hard because it seems like the field goals keep moving on us. I guess we would really appreciate it if you were to, consider the CSM. We're trying to do everything we can with the hand that we've been dealt to make it, as seamless to what is around us. Sorry, just a second. And I guess the last thing I wanted to add is the staff's recommendation, to deed land for Cami Circle. That's puzzling to me why they would request that. Because that would only run one city block and then run into the subdivision to our west. I'm really puzzled by that. And I guess on top of that, they're also asking for a drainage way in the same spot. And it's not feasible to have both things in the same spot. And I guess I don't really know what to think about the whole asking for another section of land for another road. I mean, I understand that there may have to be inroads in the future to get, utilities and whatnot, but I don't know if we can even how to ask or respond to that request. And I guess that's where I'm at there. I'm not going to finish very well, but I hope you understand that we are trying to do the best we can with the property that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Are there any questions for either of the registrants? Any questions for either of the registrants? Alder Heck.
Thank you. either one of the registrants can answer. I noticed, I didn't quite catch what was said at the beginning about plans for each of those lots. There are 4 of them. There's one that would have the current home. There was reference to building another home, maybe 2 other homes. If you could just tell me what your plans are for the lots, and in the best case scenario, what your timing might be.
The plans for the lot is we purchased this with the intention to build our house here. I don't know if you have available the CSM to you, but I believe lot 3 is the one that we were hoping to build our house on. My brother, is actually interested in the possibility of buying, I think it's lot 4, the ones to the far south border. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yep. And so that would leave us just with lot 2 as a possible sale. If we have approval, we are almost certainly going to be ready to break ground right away this spring. The only holdup there is the town has agreed to finish the Sunnybrook Road. And I believe Ben Zeller supported that earlier in June in 2019. It was supposed to be finished in 83. I found documentations by Viridian Homes, but they never did. Well, it was Don Simon back then, sorry. So the town of Burke has agreed to improve that road. And the only thing is they said that we can start doing work immediately as long as we
put gravel down and maintain anything before it gets tore up and paved. We would do nothing with lot 1. We would move his parents into our existing residence that we're currently living in, and that low-lying area would remain untouched.
So lot 2 is the one that's you're not sure what, you might sell that off eventually.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. And that answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cantrell.
Yes, I have a couple questions. One, on lot 1, you talk about an area where they dug dirt. I'm assuming that's the area in the hatched area on the certified survey map.
That would be correct.
But that's not a wetland, right? It's just area that they took dirt out of and put it somewhere else.
Yeah, they actually used the fill for the house that we're in right now. The unfortunate thing is they did this without permission, and the town of Burke never caught it. So they actually interrupted the drainage, which is supposed to go to our west. And that was one of the big problems that we had. Yes, since they dug it, it is man-made and is not wetland. We have a delineation done, and we had to do a rainfall analysis to see if the depression that was dug is capable of holding more runoff from the construction that we may be doing. And the answer came up, thankfully, that what is there is acceptable to accept the 100-year rain event and 25-year back-to-back events.
Okay. My other question, you've probably seen that staff is recommending the extension of those 2 streets, Rising Sun Road and Cami Circle. And you've mentioned that you didn't see the need or the reason why Cami Circle should be extended, but what do you think about the Rising Sun?
I guess I don't know what to think about that. I mean, it would potentially fix the issue of the flag lot for lot number 2. You get into kind of details. Well, then you want to dictate which way that house is positioned. Were it built before that road went in, it wouldn't make sense to have it side facing. Just details for down the road.
It's something that we're open to considering and talking about, certainly. obviously we get a little squeamish and scared about going broke in that, right? If we're able to talk about extending that, does that mean we're on the hook for a significant portion of the cost of that road? So I think that is really our only hesitation.
Yeah, at this point in time, it's a reservation, so that if and when the development occurs or is likely to occur to the west, that parcel wouldn't be landlocked. I think that's the reason why staff is recommending that. But I guess I can't answer about the construction of the road, but it wouldn't happen until it's actually dedicated. It's reserved at this point in time.
Certainly.
I guess that's all my questions at this point.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any further questions of the registrants? Further questions of the registrants? Seeing no raised hands, I will close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Commissioner Cantrell.
I guess what's the timeline for the Reiner Road neighborhood plan? I know we authorized that probably, 6 months ago or more, and I'm sure that you guys have been working on it. But when do you think that you'll be bringing that forward for Plan Commission approval?
Yes, the Reiner Neighborhood Development Planning effort is on hold pending a watershed study by the City Engineering Division. There was a decision made earlier in 2020 to pause the planning effort until a detailed watershed study could be done for the Reiner neighborhood plan. Something of perhaps an evolution in our neighborhood planning that we're going to take a look at flood impacts and how to prepare for them in greater detail up front before we go ahead and make detailed land use recommendations so that we have greater certainty about those recommendations. And so that watershed study is scheduled for, I believe, the first part of 2021. And once that's done, the neighborhood planning effort would resume. That was noted in the staff report. It's also on our Reiner Neighborhood Development Plan project website on the Planning Division page, noting that we're going to be in touch with property owners when that planning effort resumes so that they know that they can then plug back into that neighborhood development planning effort where we'll have the watershed study and we'll be able to make better recommendations as a result of having that information.
One other question. Staff has recommended 2 road reservations. Can you explain the Cami Circle reservation? I totally understand the reason for the Rising Sun because that connects to other property, which is a larger property to the west for access and for future subdivision. But the Cami Circle one, I guess I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. Well, I mean, it really starts out with it would be our druthers at the staff level that this certified survey map not be approved at all because of the reasons highlighted in the staff report. And the reason why the reservations are proposed as a potential alternative, should the Plan Commission choose to approve the certified survey map, is that we will at least have 2 corridors where roads could be extended in the future, where utilities could be extended in the future. What the reservations are intended to do is to preserve those 2 66-foot wide strips so that there would not be improvements put in them that would further hinder our ability to extend roads or extend utilities. Right now, sewer and potentially water for this planning area is going to come from the west. And so by extending these reservations across the Sachs property we're trying to blunt the impact of the land division by at least preserving those two corridors where we might in the future be able to extend one or two streets, extend sanitary sewer, especially since that's going to be under gravity and want to come through any low-lying areas. So there's no guarantee that Cami Circle or Rising Sun Road would be extended exactly the way we're recommending. But we're trying to preserve something out of a land division approval here that might otherwise further impact our ability to plan for the area and to implement that plan through development approvals.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Commissioner Cantrell?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Rummel.
Thank you, Chair Zellers. Mr. Parks, can you help me understand like how these other adjacent jurisdictions would approve these things, or at least appear to from my review of those documents? And also, that's one question. And then the second one would be, you called out the flags and the shape of the properties. Is there some other answer that you could see, because you're experienced at this, that we could tell the applicant they should look at?
Sure. Maybe I'll answer the second question first in hopes that maybe it will also help to answer the first question second. First of all, under the Town of Burke Cooperative Plan that the City of Madison is party to, if you have a 5-acre or larger parcel that you would like to divide into not more than 2 lots for residential purposes, single-family residential purposes specifically, you may do so without the cooperation of the city that you will eventually accrue to when the Town of Burke folds its tent in October 2036. So that includes parts of Sun Prairie, Village of DeForest, as well as us in the City of Madison. And so the property owners, because they have an 11-acre parcel, could avail themselves of that exemption in the cooperative plan that would allow them to create 2 lots. Frankly, they could configure those lots however they saw fit without regard for our future plans or desires to extend utilities and things like that. But because you have a 4-lot proposal in front of you, where we're going to have the potential impact of 3 additional homes, you're going to have that much more impact on our ability to plan and implement those plans because you have, instead of 1 property owner, you'll have potentially 4. And under state law, even with a cooperative plan, a property owner has to consent in almost all cases to an annexation or an attachment, or it doesn't happen. So we have lot lines that impact our ability to extend utilities. We have property owners who may or may not be interested in coming into our fair city sooner than October 2036 when they won't have a choice. So hopefully that answered your second question. And then the 3-legged stool that is extraterritorial plat or land division jurisdiction requires that the town in which the property is located approve the land division or subdivision, which the Town of Burke did in September 2019. And then the property owners went through a prolonged process with Dane County. Dane County has 2 roles in the land division that's before you tonight. They had to approve a zoning map amendment. Dane County controls the zoning of property in the unincorporated areas, or most of the unincorporated areas of the county. And so they have a zoning map and they have a process to change that zoning map, similar to what we have in the city, that you have to submit to the county. You go before the Zoning and Land Regulation Committee, and ultimately the Dane County Board approves your rezoning request following a recommendation by the town. And then likewise, the county, where they have zoning jurisdiction, they also have subdivision jurisdiction. And so they also had to approve the land division that's before you tonight. And something that was perhaps a unique wrinkle for the Sachs land division was that the town of Burke needed to change its comprehensive plan. Otherwise, the residential zoning that was needed in order to facilitate the lots that are before the Plan Commission tonight would not be possible. So there was an extended process through the town of Burke in Dane County where the town of Burke comprehensive plan was changed from natural resource conservation to rural residential to facilitate or allow for a zoning map change to be consistent. So that's why there was an extended process through Dane County. So you have to have all three approvals in order to be able to record the certified survey map. If the town and the county object, it wouldn't even make it to the Plan Commission. If the City of Madison Plan Commission doesn't find that its extraterritorial criteria are met, then the town and the county approvals are effectively mooted because you have to have all three approvals in order to take a certified survey map to record.
Thank you. So if the applicant were willing to only have 2 lots, they wouldn't really have any issues to resolve, but because they want more, they do. So if they went forward with the 2 lots, is there any then future point where they could build a second house on their lot, like an accessory dwelling unit, or is the zoning not permit that kind of infill on one's property?
I'm not an expert on the Dane County zoning code, whether or not they allow accessory dwelling units or under what process, and whether it's similar to the city's process where it's a conditional use in most residential zoning districts. But the exemption in the cooperative plan with the town of Burke is intended to allow for those 5-acre or larger parcels to be divided. It's kind of a negotiated outcome between the town and the municipalities that the town will eventually attach to in 2036, where this is an agreement that was entered into in January 2007. The general thrust of it is for 29 years that those attaching municipalities would have control over development, quote unquote, which is zoning change from an agricultural or residential district to a non-agricultural or non-residential district, construction of more than one principal building on a parcel of land, or the division of land other than that 2-lot single-family residential land division. Now, we've had since January 2007, I would say approximately a dozen of those one-time division of 5-acre or larger parcels into the 2 single-family residential lots. It's something that quite a few town of Burke property owners have availed themselves of. And by and large, the city has been more than willing to work with those property owners on those land divisions, first and foremost, because if they qualify for that exemption, we have to use a light touch because that's what our cooperative plan and agreement with the town of Burke says. But we just want to make sure that there's going to be 2 single-family lots at the end of the day when that 5-acre or larger parcel is divided. And so in the case of the Sachs property, regardless of where those lot lines end up, if they were to say take the 11 acres and just divide it into 2 lots, then that would be perfectly consistent with that cooperative plan exemption. And we would do whatever was necessary to facilitate that. But because they want to create 4 lots, that makes it development. And in addition to needing extraterritorial approval by the Plan Commission, we also have to approve the quote unquote development under the terms of our cooperative plan.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. One last question and I'll give up the floor. So hypothetically, if the property owners pursued the 2-lot solution with our so-called light touch, what recommendations would staff have for road extensions and all the issues that you were mentioning before to reserve for utilities and whatever else that we would want to make sure we covered?
We wouldn't have any such thing to say. The 2-lot land division wouldn't come before the Plan Commission, and we would not be asking through effectively what is a waiver of our processes for anything. And that's really that negotiated outcome. When you start creating more than the 2 lots, or when you don't have a 5 acre or larger parcel, then it becomes development. And that's when we're looking in greater detail at the impacts that land division can have on the city's ability to grow into an area. And so that's the trade-off. You create the 2 lots, you get your get out of extraterritorial jurisdiction review by the city of Madison free card. But when you don't have a qualifying parcel, or you want to create more lots than that exemption allows, then we have to look at those things. And the gist of it is that you have a 5 acre or larger parcel, you divide it into 2. Generally speaking, those resulting parcels are not going to have quite the same impact on future planning and the implementation of those plans as a subdivision or a land division with a greater number of resulting lots. Because you're taking a larger piece of property, you're dividing it into more than 2 resulting lots, and then we're dealing with those things that I mentioned before. Property owners that have to consent to attaching prior to final attachment. We have to be concerned about where those lot lines end up in terms of development patterns, impacts on utility extensions, the ability to connect properties, things of that nature. So again, it's a negotiation. We agreed to it when the town of Burke agreed to final attachment in October 2036. And these are effectively the same rules that properties in the town of Burke are following in the city of Sun Prairie and in the village of DeForest. Obviously, those municipalities may have different rules, different plans, different objectives for the areas that are of the town that are going to accrue to them than the city of Madison may, but they're still following that same 2-lot exemption for 5 acre or larger parcels. That's written in, and it applies regardless of which municipality you're going to end up in 16 years.
Just one final question. So from your work with the applicant, are they aware of this option, and did you discuss it with them?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. The Commissioner Sundquist.
Yes, thank you. Alder Rummel covered a lot of what I was going to ask about, but and so did Commissioner Cantrell. But on the timing issue of the plan, I understand when it's going to be resumed, but when is it reasonable to think the applicant or the city would have a better idea of what the desired, even if it's not final, what the sort of desired level of density and layout in this area might be? What's a reasonable time frame for that? Sometime next year, or is it going to?
I can take a shot at that, and I don't know if Heather or Brian Grady, who's also on the call, want to jump in on that. But I would say that we're probably 12 to 18 months from having an adopted plan out here, based on the timing for the watershed study and then the planning effort that will follow that. We had done, my understanding is we'd done a decent amount of preliminary work and had at least one engagement with property owners in the planning area before it was determined that we would pause. So I think it's probably 12 to 18 months. And I would look to Heather or to Brian to correct me if I'm off track on that.
I don't think.
Okay. Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Brian attended just an internal meeting, interagency meeting today that more light may have been shed on the watershed study timeline, but I don't know, Brian, do you have any more refined estimate of when that plan could be completed?
Sorry. Can you raise your hand, Brian, so I can see where you are in this list of people? Oh, I found you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I think Tim's estimate of 12 to 18 months, I hope that's a conservative estimate. And so the watershed study for this area will start in the first quarter, I believe, of 2021. And as they get to, probably after about 9 months or so, we'll have more certainty and can then restart our planning process. Basically, what the point we were at before is we were formulating our land use recommendations. And as engineering was starting to dive into that and think about stormwater considerations, that's when they said there's just too many variables here. And rather than putting forth a plan that was okay, but maybe not accurate, and then have to change the plan, after we had a watershed study done, we decided let's just push pause and not put out a false hope potentially of a land use plan. So I would hope that by the end of 2021, we could have that draft land use plan and be working with property owners and other stakeholders. Early 2022 would be the latest, I would say. And certainly apologies for delaying, but we just didn't see any good side of putting out a plan that we'd have to pull back with more watershed studied information.
Okay, thanks. And to Mr. Parks, thanks for the explanation about the loophole on I think you called it that, but whatever, the ability to do the 5 acre lots. Do we know enough now in terms of our planning goals for that area to know? I mean, the 5 acre lots would be allowable and there would be nothing we could do about it. That might not be the best outcome, though. I mean, wouldn't we probably want more density than that when this plan comes about? And would the 4 lots be like more consistent with what we're looking for eventually? I don't know, or some greater number than 2.
Sure. Just to clarify, it's the division of a 5 acre larger parcel into 2 lots. So what the resulting lots look like, it would be greater than or equal to 5 and then divided into 2. And again, to reiterate, because of that exemption in the cooperative plan, we don't have say-so over the configuration of those 2 lots. It's possible through the town or the county approval that those 2 jurisdictions may have some comment. Dane County does have subdivision rules that speak to lots requiring frontage on roads and general rules of how a lot should be configured. But they would apply those, not us. We're basically waving our hands on that, and we're accepting whatever results from one of those exemption land divisions because we agreed to. And the general tenor of that is that we're hoping that because it's a 5 acre parcel to start, and it's only being divided into 2 lots, that the resulting lots are going to have less impact on our ability to either plan for an area or implement an adopted plan as the time goes by. So it's trying to acknowledge that property owners may want to divide their property one time to create an additional lot so that up to 2 single family homes could be built. While trying to preserve our ability to plan for urban growth and the utilities and street corridor or street networks that are necessary to support it.
So from a staff point of view, I guess I get the process, and that's what they could do without us, getting in the way. But is that a better outcome than what they're proposing? I hear you when you say it's less intrusive and less of a problem for our plans going forward because it's just fewer houses, fewer, utility connections and everything else. But we don't ever do plans for lots that large. So it's very likely that what our plan would be for more density than that, right? So
yes. I mean, in general, when we finally have the ability to resume the Reiner neighborhood development planning effort, we're probably going to call for residential development out here. I don't know that we know that for absolute certain. There's an area further west that is commercial / light industrial. And I know one of the challenges that the Reiner neighborhood planning area presents is we have some town industrial uses, we have some quarries, we have some commercial areas that are in close proximity to some established town residential areas. And the interface between those will be a little bit of a challenge as we go through the planning process. But given that Sunnybrook Drive has, on the east side of it, the Sunnybrook Heights town subdivision has a pretty well-established residential character, it's probably likely that this land just across the road will probably also be residential. What the densities will be, I don't know that we have that worked out just yet, but I think it's probably reasonable to say at this early stage that you'll probably see residential. And typically in an area like this on the urban edge, we're probably looking at less than 8 units an acre, but it's going to depend on more detailed planning that hasn't really occurred at this point in time.
It's like an eagle flying by your camera.
No, just a cat. So
Yeah.
we have kids and cats. I mean, plan commission meetings are just, so much more intimate than they used to be.
I figured it was not an eagle. Okay, so I guess we have, just to sum up in my head and maybe for others, we have the issue of timing. That if the plan were further along, we'd be able to help the Saxes figure out how to comport with that and move forward. If they cleaned up the flag-shaped lots and made the reservation of the two streets, that's still suboptimal from the city's point of view, right? Because we don't know exactly where those streets are supposed to go. We don't have the watershed study yet. We don't know the drainage. And maybe it's not even possible to clean up the flag lots, right? I'm just trying to see if there's some way they could move forward while we're still in this 12 plus months of planning.
Well, I think that the extension of Rising Sun Road west to east, following some alignment, I think that, and this was, I believe, where Commissioner Cantrell was going with his questions, and obviously it was certainly alluded to by the applicants during their comments. That would, to me, be the road or the corridor that seems likeliest of the two. We didn't, go in and do a tremendous amount of analysis about extending CAMI. We're, like it was noted in the staff report, we're just, we usually use existing roads or an existing street network to begin a proposed street network. And so you have CAMI Circle there. It's not out of the question that CAMI could be extended in some fashion, but it's also fair to say that we don't know exactly how. We're just trying to preserve our options at this point if the land division were to be approved. And as far as the flag lots are concerned, the reservation for Rising Sun Road in some respects kind of addresses that, because that 66-foot wide reservation would probably follow the 66-foot wide panhandle that reaches out to Sunnybrook Drive from the majority of Lot 2. For the rest of the property, the panhandle for Lot 3, if a 4-lot land division were to be approved, it's not out of the question that lots 3 and 4 could be reconfigured to be more conventionally sized lots. I don't know that I have any information that would suggest that Lot 3 would have to be a panhandle or flag lot, and that if 4 lots were going to be approved and we weren't concerned about impacts on future plans, things like that, we're not asking for an extent of a reservation that far south. Whether or not that's prudent, I don't know. But again, just going off of the road network that we have, that's where those reservations are recommended. But if Lot 3 and Lot 4 become more conventionally shaped lots, especially if Sunnybrook Drive is going to be improved to something of a town road standard, where there would be frontage for both of those lots, all of our concerns about the impact of a land division on future planning and implementation thereof remain, but that might address a development pattern issue or make the resulting lots less worse, if you will, than the proposed flag lot for Lot 3 in particular.
Okay, thanks very much.
Alder Hack.
Thank you. Mr. Parks, this is hypothetical. Is one able to take advantage of the larger than 5 acre split into 2 provision more than once for a portion of a property or a property?
No. It's very clear in the cooperative plan that it's a one-time division. And typically what we do, in order, it's not to get overly technical on process, we do sign those certified survey maps. We provide specific language for them to put on the certified survey map, basically saying that it's exempt from our approval because of a cooperative plan provision. But then noting in that any further division of the property may require city approval, which is basically just an acknowledgement for future folks, because that exemption is a one-time tool that survives until the town of Burke goes out of business in October 2036. So over that roughly 29-year period where the cooperative plan is in effect, it's that one-time division, regardless of who owns it. And it's not out of the question that you could divide a much larger than 5 acre parcel into 2, and that someone might come calling in 2028 and say, hey, I've got a 5 acre or larger parcel and I only want to divide it one time into 2 lots. And that would be where we would throw the hypothetical flag and say, no, you can't. And that's why we put that language on the certified survey map, so that it's clear for those down the road that one-time division has already occurred, and that they'll need to seek formal city approvals for any further divisions.
Thank you. That means the rest of my clever questions don't need to be asked. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any further questions? Any further questions of staff? Seeing no raised hands, I would be then looking for a motion. Commissioner Cantrell.
Well, I'm going to be recommending, as staff has recommended here, that this CSM be placed on file without prejudice and reject it at this point in time. And if I get a second, I'll explain my motion.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Sundquist.
We have a timing issue here, obviously. It's unfortunate that the staff has been working with the applicant for sounds like 2 years or more, and but there is hope in sight, and we have authorized the Reiner Road neighborhood plan, so that's in the works, and I think that within a year from now we should have a good idea of where that street system may lie in on their property. And I think that one of the flags is likely to be where we want a street. I'm not sure if we want Cami Circle extended, but we could leave that lot and Cami Circle out for now and 20 years from now, when that's potentially in the city, that L-shaped parcel could be subdivided or surveyed, and because there's a large enough parcel that there'd be interest to do that. But I'm not even sure that Rising Sun Road is the stem of the flag lot that we should have a future street extension. I think the other flag might be where that street should be, because that hits the center of the parcel to the west. So I think there's at least some questions in my mind at this point in time. And unfortunately, the owners are kind of trapped, and their plans are going to have to be delayed. But this is a survey that we'll approve eventually. But I think that, at least from my point of view, we need more. We need more hard evidence of where those one or two future streets could be extended. So that's why I'm recommending that this be placed on file without prejudice, and hopefully staff can inform the property owner maybe a year from now or so where that proposed street will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cantrell. Commissioner Sundquist.
Yes, I agree with everything that Commissioner Cantrell just said, and I would just add that, this is, I do feel for the applicant, because they're dealing with multiple layers here, county, township, city, and this isn't Viridian, they don't do this every day. On the other hand, when you buy a big chunk of land and then subdivide it, you do become a developer. And there were rules here that said you couldn't do this, or at least you weren't guaranteed to be able to do this. You had to get the city's approval, with the exception, as Mr. Parks laid out. And so I wish it were coming quicker and they could do what they want for their family and have build something that's also good for the city. Unfortunately, that second part of it, we just don't know yet. We don't know what the city needs, and drainage is pretty important. I think the applicant mentioned that there'd been some disturbing of the surface there by the previous owner, so that may even exacerbate it. So, this watershed study is going to be important, and then how we develop the road network around that with the drainage. I mean, this is all going to be critical, going forward. These lot lines will be there a long time. The houses will be there a long time. If there's some way that there can be ongoing communication with staff and that some of these things are resolved sooner than the plan is completely finalized, that might be a way forward to go sooner. And I would hope, staff and the applicant could keep talking. I don't know if that might be a lost cause. I don't know, but maybe. But anyway, it just isn't. The option is there for 2 lots, but to keep subdividing it with the flag lots and without knowing where the road network is going to be and everything, any other developer would get, I think, the same answer from us, that it's not right. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? Any other discussion? Seeing no raised hands for further discussion, we will come to a vote. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. I see no raised hands, so motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is agenda item 14, Legistar 63303. Planning Division presentation of a potential new framework for land use / sub area plans. And Ms. Stouter will kick this off. Ms. Stouter.
Thank you so much, Chair Zellers. Thank you for allowing us to integrate this into this evening's meeting. I wanted to let all the plan commissioners know this was one item we had hoped to tackle together with you on Wednesday, but since we had so few other items on our regular agenda, we thought it'd be good to separate it and have it this evening. So thank you for indulging us in this exercise. So we are very early in an effort to explore a possible new framework for our sub-area planning, which we'll present to you in just a few moments here. I want to take an opportunity to thank the core staff team that's been working on this effort, Jeff Greger, Urvashi Martin, Linda Horvath, Brian Grady, and Jules Stroik, who are all here this evening and will either be presenting or available to answer questions. The approach that we'll share with you would broaden and also standardize just one type of our sub-area planning efforts to cover land use, building height, and major infrastructure investments citywide. And what we envision for these plans is that they would be slightly more detailed than the comprehensive plan's land use map, but probably definitely less detailed than a lot of our sub-area plans that are that you see us working on today that have been recently adopted. Less detailed and less nuanced than a lot of those plans. Importantly, I want to say that if we move forward with a new framework like this, we wouldn't altogether eliminate other sub-area planning efforts, but we would definitely have to decrease the number of them. And we would likely change their focus to more strategies and shorter-term actions that aren't already covered in broader land use plans that we'll discuss a little bit more tonight. Again, I want to stress that we're really early in this effort. I anticipate that we'll have more questions than answers this evening and want to set the stage for gaining comfort with unanswered questions tonight. I think as a staff team, we really want to hear your thoughts and your questions and concerns as we decide whether and how to move forward with this new framework. It's important just to mention that as we work on this, we're really guided by equity. And I mean that in the broadest sense. I think you can all think hard about who is involved in our planning processes, who spends hours, volunteering their time to come up with recommendations in their neighborhoods related to future land use and change. We want to make sure that we're really focused on equitable distribution of our staff resources across the city. Listening to all voices and not just the loudest voices. And so can be a really challenging thing to hear, but I think that that's something that I'd like for you all to give some thought to as we discuss this. And secondly, we're guided by just practical sustainability. And by that, of course, we are always guided by ecological sustainability, but I think what I mean in this case is sustainability with regard to our staff resources. As many of you know, sometimes a sub-area planning process, the Reiner plan excluded in this case, but sometimes sub-area plans can take about 2 years, depending on the depth that we go into as a staff team with regard to public engagement. And sometimes the sub-area plans that take the longest might be for a very small chunk of city land, and that's not always wrong. Definitely don't want to give that impression, but if one of our goals is more equitable and more citywide coverage, then necessarily we need to go broader and less deep in some cases. And so we are thinking, always about developing a framework for our future colleagues and one that is sustainable as our city continues to grow and change over time. So as this team presents, what we've learned thus far and one way we've thought about moving forward with this, I hope you'll all think about, what are some of the things you like about our current framework? What benefits might you see from changing to a framework like this? What concerns and suggestions do you have? And again, we expect many. This is not without internal concern. And so we would anticipate that you'll have a lot of tough questions and concerns to share with us as well. What additional information would you need as we would move forward with the refinement of a new framework? And then finally, how would you like us to coordinate with you moving forward? So those are just some of the key questions that are in both the staff memo and the presentation. And at this point, I want to turn it over to Jeff Greger, who will kick us off with the presentation. And I believe he will share his screen here. Yep, here we go. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Heather. Good evening. I'm going to start the presentation off by reviewing the goals that we're proposing for the planning framework. First goal is to create discrete plan geographies that cover the entire city, along with the areas on the periphery of the city that are currently covered by neighborhood development plans. Goal 2 would be to create more standardized plans relating to broader citywide perspective. The hope is that, going broader versus going deep with regard to land use regulatory framework and major infrastructure investments, that overall this process would be more equitable, or a more equitable approach overall. Goal 3 is to create full citywide coverage for land use and building height recommendations, as well as infrastructure recommendations. Goal 4 would be to create or to do more frequent plan updates. Currently, we don't have a standard rotation of doing updates for plans in the city. By doing more frequent updates, it kind of leads into goal 5, is to replace the decennial update of the comp plan. So by the hope or the idea is to do these more frequent updates every 10 years so that we could replace the comp plan GFL UMAP update process by incorporating these district plans, land use plans into the comp plan, and that would be the mechanism to update the GFL UMAP. And finally, create a mechanism to amend or retire sub-area plans that may not reflect current city policies or priorities. This was a recommendation in the comp plan that was adopted in 2018. So wanted to kind of point out two things on this slide. On the image on the right shows planning by decade. And what we're overlaying is an example of these discrete planning districts. In this case, we're showing 12. And you can see some gaps in planning throughout the city. The idea would be that those gaps would get filled going to this planning district idea. And the hope with these planning districts is that we can incorporate, for the most part, the other plans that were done, so we wouldn't necessarily cut an old plan in half and have to split it up between districts. So we're taking that into account as we draw these district lines. The image on the left shows kind of the problem with in some areas of the city where we have a lot of planning that have gone on, but these plans overlap. And in some cases, there are conflicting recommendations. And so it gets confusing when you're reviewing proposals as to which recommendation takes precedence over the other. So the blue line on there again is a depiction of a potential district boundary, and you can see how that would play in, how that would, for the most part, kind of clean up those overlapping plans. As a staff group, we did some research into what other communities have done with regards to these distinct districts. The next 3 slides, we have 9 communities that we looked at, differing sizes, some with populations close to Madison, other ones like Los Angeles with much larger populations. But we were looking to see how other communities were handling this sort of effort. And we found a lot of similarities with what we are proposing to do. The communities on your screen here all create these distinct districts like we're looking to do. They often will do an update or do a plan, and that updated plan becomes part of their comprehensive plan. Depending on the size of the municipality, the number of districts will vary. Los Angeles has 35 districts. Denver, Colorado has 19. And we're looking, right now, the feeling is somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 for Madison, maybe a good number. Some of these communities, some of the highlights, by doing these district plans, it's allowed these municipalities to be able to do some more community engagement, like in Milwaukee. They've been able to hire community partners to work on community capacity building in these neighborhoods. In Baltimore, they have the ability to adopt community managed planning efforts. So they're not necessarily run by the city as long as they meet a certain requirements set out by the city. They are allowed to be adopted and rolled into their comprehensive plan. Let's see, Lincoln, Nebraska on this slide, their planning efforts, they allow their planning director to conduct annual reviews of sub-area plans 5 years or older to assess the viability of the plan. And that would lead to the ability to potentially retire plans. They have done that since enacting this ability to do that. Let's see. There are other things on these slides, like Minneapolis. They've pretty much retired their small area plans, and they now rely on just a comp plan, future land use map, and a built form map to guide their development review. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Urvashi Martin to kind of walk through what kind of information we're looking at with regards to creating these districts. So Urvashi.
Thanks, Jeff. Good evening, everyone. So we put together some geographic boundaries of some potential district plan areas that can be created using different types of criteria like census boundaries. We looked at neighborhood boundaries, natural features, transportation corridors, major roads, etc., to come up with an example of 12 districts. And we have overlaid those 12 districts on different information and created some series of maps that I'll go over in the next few slides. So the first map here we have is the 12 districts overlaid on the comprehensive plan's generalized future land use map. In the next map, we have overlaid those 12 districts on the census tract boundaries to show how some of the districts are very closely following the census tract boundaries. These are 2020 census tract boundaries, so these would be the most recent census tract boundaries that would be used with the upcoming 2020 census data. Next slide. In this map, we overlaid the 12 districts on people of color data. So this is % people of color by census block group. It's using 2018 ACS data and showing the districts where there's a higher % people of color, and also identifying the districts that do not currently have any persons of color there. In the next slide, we also looked at the number of households in the city. So we overlaid the 12 districts on the number of households using the 2010 data here. So the darker colors on the map show the districts that that currently have a higher number of households, and the lighter colored areas are districts that currently don't have a higher number of households in the city. We also looked at the projected increase in the number of households expected by 2050 using 2010 as the baseline data. We're using the MPO's data here, the MPO projections for number of households. So on the map here, it's the darker colors are showing the districts that would see an increase in the number of households by 2050, and the lighter colors are districts where there won't be as much increase in the number of households. We also overlaid the 12 districts on neighborhood associations. So the color codes on the map show the areas in the city where there's currently a neighborhood association in place. The gray areas on the map show the areas in the city of Madison that currently don't have a neighborhood association. We also overlaid the 12 districts on the existing sub-area plans that the city has adopted over the decades. The color coding here shows the plans that have been adopted in each of the decades, starting from 1980s with the pinkish color and going all the way up to the most recent plans adopted in 2020 with the orangish colors. This is a map here that shows a zoom in to one of the districts. This is District 3, which is on the west side of the city. It is giving you a sense of scale, geographic scale of these districts. It's also showing the existing sub-area plans that are within those within that district, and also the plans which are adjacent to that district, and also identifying areas that within the district that currently don't have an existing sub-area plan in place. With that, I'll turn it over to Linda.
Good evening, everyone. The comprehensive plan, as everyone knows on this call, is our guiding framework for future growth and development. District plans would nest within the comprehensive plan, providing that next tier of more detailed recommendations. The district plans would be very similar in content and process to our current neighborhood development plans. And in part, this is an opportunity for better efficiency, alignment, consistency, and coverage by absorbing the NDPs into the district plans. All other sub-area plans that we do would align with the district plans, carrying through those land use and other recommendations, but covering other contents as well. In some cases, there could be more detailed discussions on things like land use, and that would especially happen if we have the ability as the city to supplement or to support those types of recommendations through land banking and possibly building community facilities. There would also be consistency analyses during adoption of the smaller area plans to ensure they align with the larger area plans. And we're continuing to discuss how to most effectively and efficiently plan for smaller areas within the context of these district plans. Next slide, Jeff. So again, we're proposing to do 12 area or district plans, and we would fit these plans into a 10-year update cycle. We also propose an 18-month planning process for each of these plans from start to plan adoption. The plans would again follow the lead of the comprehensive plan, fitting within that general future land use map categories and building heights, but addressing zoning and the other topics you see on the screen. Next slide, Joe. So the Planning Division, as Heather mentioned at the outset of the presentation, is committed to providing more equitable planning processes that lead to better outcomes for everybody in the city. We know we need to do better in reaching out to and involving our residents in Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. It's for this reason that as we create this broader, more standardized approach, we want to take the guidance from the ongoing voice of the customer process that a number of us on this call are involved in, We may, for example, conduct racial equity and social justice analysis for the district plan approach to set up our public participation processes. This, again, will help us determine how to better reach out to and involve our BIPOC communities. Implementation is also critically important to us, and we're considering an approach for tracking major capital improvements that would be recommended in these plans. And this could be similar to what we do with our community development block grant planning processes. Evaluation would be conducted before and after completion of the district plan process. We're also looking into trying to come up with a process to decide when a district plan would supersede an existing sub-area plan and when or how to amend or retire those smaller area plans. We also anticipate needing some external assistance for things like affordable housing gap analyses, market studies, transportation analyses, and possibly bringing on community partners as some other communities have done and as we did with our comprehensive planning process. Finally, we're going to develop criteria, and this is a big part of what we have yet to dig into for deeper dive, more strategic planning efforts, such as our CDBG plans, Oscar Mayer, Royster Clark, and TOD plans. A number of cities, as Jeff mentioned, have these criteria processes, and so we intend to possibly circle back and look into these other communities in more detail to get guidance. Thanks for flipping that, Jeff. So our CDBG concentration neighborhood planning program is our community development block grant supported program. These are areas of the city with 51% or more people who live with low and moderate incomes. These are largely resident-driven approaches with focus on issues that are relevant to those people living in the areas. We tend to do capacity building with these plans. Relationship building is also a big focus of these planning efforts with residents and community partners. And we're looking at, with our district planning process, potentially a rolling start for these deeper dive CDBG plans or subsequent planning after the district plans are done. You can go ahead to the next one. So on your screen, you're seeing that we also do, of course, redevelopment plans. Oscar Mayer, Royster Clark are two examples of those types of plans. Oscar Mayer is an example where that property is located within what we called our Emerson Eakin Yahara neighborhood plan. And that was a CDBG plan. Again, it covers a much larger area, and the Oscar Mayer area has been on the city's radar for some time, but we always knew we wanted to do our deeper dive plan there. Of course, the sale of the property, that coming online, was something that really jump-started us into planning for this area. Another example would be our mall area plans. Those are identified in our comp plan as growth priority areas. And as we know, our malls, as well as malls across the country, are facing some pretty significant economic changes. COVID has further put pressure on the malls. So we're in the process now of planning for those areas. You can hop to the next slide, Jeff. So we're really going to be refining the district plan geographies and the plan contents going forward, developing and refining criteria, as I said before, for these sub-area plans that we do and will continue doing. We also are going to be gathering feedback and coordinate with other city agencies because, of course, we always work hand in hand with engineering, traffic engineering, community development, and others on our smaller area plans. We also want to develop a plan amendment and retirement protocol, review by mayor, the plan commission as we are tonight, the council. So we're really at the beginning here in terms of reaching out. And so we only just begun and we're interested in hearing your feedback. You can flip to the next slide. So you can see some discussion questions on the screen, which Heather also mentioned at the outset. We invite you to, of course, ask questions about the presentation if you want to, but also if you could think about these questions. And benefits you anticipate from the framework, concerns or suggestions, additional info that would be beneficial, and how we should further coordinate with your Plan Commission on this process. I'll invite other staff to jump in as well in answering questions or making further comments.
Okay. Does that conclude the staff presentation then?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Are there questions about what has been outlined here? Comments? Commissioner Cantrell.
Well, I guess I see one benefit in that the district plans would cover every square inch of the city, which is obviously currently not being covered, and it would potentially do away with some of the overlapping plans that we've adopted. And I guess that one slide that you showed that the one District 7, I think, had, I don't know, maybe 10 plans in it. Obviously, some of those were specifically to East Washington and Williamson Street, and I think obviously those are important because each of those are they have different focuses, and obviously a lot of those recommendations in those sub-area plans, I think, were very specific to those areas. And I guess I would be interested in how staff wants to treat those, or how would they treat those in developing this district plan. Would you just collapse some of those ideas, or just have that there would be a supplemental document in the district plan for those? So that's a question I have. And the other question I have is, you have 12 districts, and you want to use these district plans to I guess, do away with the need to do the general land use plan that we have to do every 10 years. So these district plans are going to take potentially 18 months to prepare. So that 18-month cycle might be 10 to 15 years in doing. So how would you do that? I guess I'm kind of wondering how that would work. So those are a couple of questions I have.
Who would like to take those questions? Mr. Grady, do you want to take those?
Sure. Thank you. And so, the question about how would existing plans be incorporated into these district plans, I think what would largely take place is if you're creating a district plan, we would take all those underlying plans that exist and pull out the recommendations that exist in those plans that are also going to be included in the contents of a district plan. So we don't only pull out imagine two magnets that attract the contents of a district plan. We'd pull those out. Obviously, we have land use plans and land use recommendations and sub-area plans. We have a 2-year-old comp plan that provides also a great starting point for these. So those would kind of be elevated into a district plan. And then any other remaining recommendations that cover things not in a district plan that the city still sees as valid, I guess, could remain in that older document. Maybe we pull that out into some sort of supplemental document, like you mentioned, Commissioner Cantrell. That's kind of that process there. We'd probably need to do some evaluation of what recommendations do we still see as current with current city policy, and which ones maybe are dated or not following city policy. So I think we would use the land use recommendations to pull out, and then there's other recommendations could live on for some time, or they could be retired. And that's where we would need to, as Linda mentioned, kind of that consistency analysis. What would still keep moving forward? But I think the focus of district plans, there would be more of a focus. It would cover more of the physical planning, land use, transportation, those key infrastructure kind of points. And then for the the 18-month cycle. And so, yeah, the idea is, so right now about every 10 years or so, we go through and update our entire comp plan GFLU map. Rather than opening that up every 10 years or so, we're basically incrementally building that map and updating that map on a regular basis. And so we envision about maybe an 18-month cycle. The idea there is that we would need to right size the depth of these plans, and maybe 18 months might be the right amount of time to allow us to move around the city. But what you could have is you could have one plan going on at one time. You might have two plans going on at one time. Maybe if there's two districts that say share a mutual border or a key border, maybe you do those two district plans at the same time. And so there could be kind of at different intervals, but overall our goal would be to get around the whole city over about a 10-year basis so that any plan is never more than 10 years from being recently refreshed.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions or follow-ups, Commissioner?
Yeah, not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. We did get a late registrant, and so we will take him next. Public member, Bob Kleba, 704 East Gorham Street, Madison, Wisconsin, opposed and wishing to speak. Mr. Kleba.
Yeah, interestingly, I was not late. I registered at 5:30, so I hope other registrants are able to testify. First, I can see that a lot of thought and work went into tonight's presentation. I like the idea of having a mechanism to retire plans when they are no longer useful. However, I am concerned about how district plans can replace sub-area and neighborhood plans. For example, here in Tenny Lapham, we paid close attention to how the comprehensive plan could affect our neighborhood and how our neighborhood plan integrated with it. Happily, we were able to work with planning staff and the Plan Commission to maintain the integrity of our neighborhood. However, in the James Madison Park neighborhood, we have seen how the development plan and the comprehensive plan have combined to plan for the demolition of a significant part of the historic fabric of our city. The UDD4 zoning along East Washington Corridor and the allowed 6-story and 4-story building heights elsewhere in James Madison Park are already encouraging the demolition of 19th and 20th century houses. As a city, we are lucky to have a vibrant residential neighborhood so close to downtown that contributes significantly to our shared local history. It will be a shame to lose this history under the proposed plan. My point is that the James Madison Park example, in that example, the existing district plan totally overwhelms the neighborhood and proposes to destroy it. This will also be true for neighborhoods in proposed district plans where residents are primarily renters and transient. I appreciate that planning raises the issue of deeper public participation, but the James Madison Park neighborhood is an area where that failed during the downtown plan and comprehensive plan development. Happily in Tenny Lapham, we are better organized and could represent our interests in a proposed district plan. I worry that poorly organized neighborhoods will suffer from being dominated and even demolished by a district plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kleba. Ms. Stouter just checked the registrant list, and Mr. Kleba is the only one who has registered for this item at this time. So we will move on to, does anybody have any questions of Mr. Kleba? Seeing none, we will move on to questions of staff. Commissioner Spencer.
Am I unmuted? I didn't see a prompt.
Yeah.
Okay. I just had a couple comments and questions. I'm looking forward to seeing how sub-area plans are retired, that sort of decision, and how neighborhood groups and residents are notified of that. Thank you for all of the maps, the visuals providing for us. I know that those aren't easy to make, but it was so helpful seeing all of the existing sub-area plans, seeing areas that had plans and had existing, neighborhood groups and that didn't have neighborhood groups. It was really good to see that. I think one map that I would like to see in the future as you're working on this is one that sort of overlaps the census tracts, people of color maps, which were great, and then areas that have plans and neighborhood groups. I guess I just really wanted to see areas that either don't have a plan and don't have a neighborhood group, or one or the other. I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but just a thought. But I love the visuals. Thank you. And I was wondering for the Community Development Block Grant, if there was discussion about, you had talked about bolstering participation and involvement in plans, if there was any interest in citizen planners or working with community members on doing things like leading design meetings, taking surveys, and that sort of thing. Those are my only questions. Thank you.
Mr. Grady, do you want to take that or pass it off to somebody else? Or?
I'm going to pass that one off to maybe Linda or Jewel potentially.
Okay, whichever one of you want to take it, raise your hand, please, and I'll unmute you. Ms. Horvath.
Okay, great. And I'll allow Jewel, of course, to also add something if she'd like to. So your question concerning the CDBG plans is a good one and a timely one, because we are reviewing how we do those types of plans as well. More specifically, we have thought of potentially, entertaining the idea of community planners that's done in other communities. And again, we have done quite a bit of research into how other communities do their planning. So that is something we've discussed internally. The other type of deeper dive tool that we've used in the past, like with our comprehensive plan, was hiring community partners. And so essentially, those partners know and have the trust of their particular community. And so they're able to engage with them maybe in a deeper way than we would as staff. They have, more connection with those communities. So that's another thing we've also considered. So more to come on that. We do, in our CDBG areas, we do pride ourselves on a pretty deep dive already, but we know that we can always improve on that. And so we'll look into ways of doing that. And if Jewel wants to, or anyone else wants to chime in, feel free from staff here.
I'm looking for another staff that may raise their hand as if they want to speak, but I don't see any. So it looks like you might have covered it. So thank you. Ms. Spencer, did you have anything else or any follow-up?
No, I agree with the district maps and the example that they provided in District 3. I just happen to be in an area that doesn't have, a plan, a sub-area plan, which is, we don't have a lot of development pressure here. But we do have a neighborhood association. So we do, meet frequently with the alder. So I appreciate the district in covering places like that don't have that already. But that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Alder Rummel.
Thank you. I also appreciate all the thought that's gone into this. You know me, I'm always a skeptic, so I'll just say that up front. So the first thing I wrote down when I saw the map in review was the 12 districts. And I have to say, as an alder who is part of a conversation about, should the council become smaller? Should it become 10 districts? I kind of thought, I wonder how these districts would relate at all to political boundaries, not just land use boundaries. And when I just sitting here now thinking more about it, like, how do they fit around school districts? I know a lot of times, you don't want to cut off kids from different schools just by some arbitrary line in a boundary. So, and then, just even as we go forward to the redistricting, how are we going to look at these basic, basic building blocks, and how does that fit in, or should it fit in, maybe is the question, to this planning effort. and then of course, being a resident of the proposed District 7, and having been around for a long time, I feel like I've been through almost all those planning processes, either as a neighborhood resident or as an alder, and I've for many years said my district gets more than its share of planning, and it's not equitably distributed. And I don't want to speculate why, but we can see that on that map, how that is the case. But it's also true, as Mr. Cantrell pointed out, they're unique. They each speak to different points on, of the things that were needed at a certain moment in time. And that gets to me to the question of the voice of the customer that staff mentioned in the presentation. So, my residents will hear you say, and I know that you don't mean it, that there's a trade-off in the equity thing, and that is, yes, we need to have everyone have a voice and participate. But, we even saw it in the letter from Ms. Leonards today. What does that mean for the people who are already, like citizen planners who are interested in how we organize our city? So I think when we talk about the voice of the customer, I think the goal is to uplift all the voices. Like, we have people that know how to participate, but we need to expand that. And so how do we do that? And I think you all have over time, through the comp plan and looking at these other communities, I like the idea of community planners. I like the neighborhood organizing institute model. Like, how are we empowering the people to help participate in our local democracy? And whether it's an 18-month cycle in the part of town or generally, just how are we engaging people so that they feel ownership on how we grow and develop and build our city. And so I am kind of concerned about what happens to the small area plans. I think the whole question of retirement will trigger that voice of the customer. And, I don't really have any quick answers other than to say, let's just focus on areas that need more planning and put aside these other plans. Because, as someone who reads plans, I can look at a plan that's 20 years old and somebody might say, oh, we should retire it. It's 20 years old. But I can still look at that plan and see stuff we haven't done that we said we wanted to do. Then there might be plenty of things we said we would do and we did. And then there will be things that we didn't even think of because we were stuck in a moment of time where you're just thinking, well, that'll never change, so we won't even look at that. But it changed. So it just seems to me these plans are part of our history. And I get as planners when you're trying to evaluate something and you have to dig through it. And this plan says this and this plan says that. I hear you. But I think through the comp plan, we discussed how to elevate the plans and their role. So I think that basic political explanation of how they fit in should hold forth going forward. And on one last point, two last points. So the CDBG plan process, I went through one of those in Darbo. And come on, we have to admit, Linda and Jewel, who probably were sort of peripherally involved, that was a hard planning process. We didn't get the usual steering committee. You know how the process was, let's get a steering committee of neighbors and they will come to 1 million meetings and help us. No one wanted to come to the meetings. Or the ones that wanted to come were the white upper middle class homeowners and not the working class poor people or working class people of color. So so we changed the approach, I think, and maybe you started changing the approach going forward, but it struck me that we ran into a dilemma with our normal practice. And like I said, you all keep doing it, so you've probably changed the practice. But I just remember feeling like, wow, it's harder to do this some neighborhoods than others, I guess is the point. And the other last thing I would add to the list of things we want to look at is sort of environmental hazards. Like when I think, we say, oh, the north sides could be redeveloped. And then what about F-35s coming or, PFAS polluting water or all these things that are externalized things that aren't part of our normal planning. So that's my first go around, and thank you. for the opportunity to help you think about it.
Thank you, Alder. A lot of good points there. I also noted down a few of those, but voice of the customer in this whole process, not just the doing the planning at the district level, but what this whole process is. We need to also, I think, get the voice of the customer. So thank you for raising that, Alder. Alder Heck.
Thank you. I want to thank Alder Rummel for all those good thoughts and those that came before hers too. I can't speak for staff, but the idea of lifting everyone up, the problem I see with that, as I said, I can't speak for staff, is that there are limited resources, and the ability to lift everyone up is limited by that. And I assume there would be choices to be made about at some point about who's going to get lifted and who isn't, and that sort of leads to one of my questions. And you referenced this, Alder Rummel, a bit, and I know Linda did too. I'm worried about the dilemma of non-property owning people being represented in even broader districts. I understand the desire to broaden a district and empower more people somehow. And I'm sure it's all about engagement and things you've learned about where people have been left out. But even if the district is large, it seems so difficult to have the voice of the majority of Madison represented, people who don't own property. That's just one thought. Maybe somebody has an idea about it. I did have a question about the comp plan and the land use map and undertaking this process. Would it require ordinance changes, and are there state laws? Aren't there some state laws involved too that tell us how often we have to update our comp plan, et cetera? I'll leave it at there for now.
So
I think Brian would be best to take that one.
Mr. Grady.
Thank you. Let me respond to both points, Alder Heck. So it seems counterintuitive that if we would go to these broad districts, we would not as successfly engage folks that we don't typically engage with. But I would actually see this as a better alternative than our 2018 comp plan process, where we tried to engage people on the whole city scale. And what that did, I think staff would say it is very tough to engage folks at a city scale, because there you are pulling out just those folks that we tend to interact with on a regular basis. We're not notifying people. It's hard to notify the whole city. And so folks that heard about the comp plan update process, especially the GFLU map update process, were those that are already connected. And so that's who we interacted with. We could probably pull the comments, what we had 600 or so map comments. We could pull a location of those comments and show a pretty, I think, revealing map. And all the meetings we spent, Plan Commission work sessions, responding to inquiries, that was all folks, I believe, I would say those are all folks that are property owning people that have time and the interest to be engaged in our process. And so that is very inequitable. I'd like to improve upon that. And so by at least going to a district geography, we have it's a better scale than working at the whole city where you're truly just picking who wants to be involved in this. We could go to a district scale and also focus our staff resources, our city resources on engaging people in those districts that are less likely to be involved. And so I agree, Alder Heck, we don't have the resources to uplift everyone's voice. We want to just balance the uplifting. We want to do what the PC agenda says, what voices are not on the table today. So I think we would focus more resources on folks that are less likely to be engaged in those geographies. So I see that as an improvement and a downside of our 2018 comp plan process. doing a citywide map is just not a good way to get widespread feedback. In terms of the state law or ordinance changes, I think we have a lot of flexibility. With our comp plan, we could have, after 10 years, just readopted our 2006 comp plan and said, oh, we just readopted it 10 years later, and now it's good for another 10 years that we have on the state law clock, basically. So we have a lot of flexibility. I think I don't know Milwaukee's situation inside and out, but you saw their example in the slides. They basically do this. Their comp plan is their mosaic of neighborhood plans. And so really with each district plan that we would update, you could technically call that a comp plan update, and we'd be good again for that 10 years. So I see this as having a more up-to-date map that's been more frequently revisited, and again allows us to focus our resources on folks that are less likely to be engaged in our processes. So that is a major emphasis. We want to make sure, and as we've talked internally, as we move to more renters in our city, people that may not be involved in a neighborhood association, we just have different customers now. We have more and different customers. We need to make sure that we're addressing folks that we're less likely to hear from, and we think that this process would allow us to do that a little better.
Thank you, Mr. Grady. Did you have any further?
Just an observation. I'll be very interested to learn and hopefully work with staff as you come up with ideas. And I mean, I know you have a lot of experts on staff about how to do community engagement of various types, and there are other cities doing similar things. But I guess I'm hoping it works, but I think we're going to have to really think outside of the processes that we've used in the past to really reach people. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on that. I do like the idea of the larger district areas, just thinking that, hopefully it would bring in a more diverse set of voices and input on an area plan. I think that, one of the things about having these very small specific plans is that it tends to have participation just from folks in the very immediate area. When in reality, redevelopment of that corridor or that small area, it impacts the whole city. And if we're able to engage a wider audience, we might also have things in that corridor, in that area, that would encourage more diversity in the future, bringing in new people to that area than what is currently there. In terms of what would be useful for looking at this in the future, I think it was mentioned that there may be kind of a standard format for some of these plans. So it would be interesting just to see if there's, a rough template, understanding that each one would have some unique features, but what you would expect to incorporate in the plans moving forward. And I was also just a question about some of these specific things that we do see in some of the smaller area plans. I was thinking even of a development we reviewed on West Washington that was part of the Mifflandia plan, and something like, not having new driveway openings on West Wash. And that was a very specific recommendation that we, relied on as a plan commission. So I was just curious if that's the sort of thing that you could see even being in a district plan, or if that would still be part of a smaller kind of special area plan.
Mr. Grady, do you want to respond to that?
I would think that we would be trying to be a little bit less specific with these plans. And so like driveway openings, I would see that as more of just a day-to-day review thing that our traffic engineering department would do. Others feel free to chime in, maybe Heather want to chime in, but I would say we try to go up a notch. And so we're just hitting those key recommendations and leaving the minutia to just kind of the day-to-day operations, because as our preferences change, if our preferences change, then the plan's no longer up to date, basically. And so one thing I'll turn your question into maybe a little bit of response here. So one thing that's also happening is our city preferences change I think, more rapidly. Like maybe things just are happening more rapidly. Innovation, technology, things just change faster. And so a plan that's 15 years old can be very out of date. It's no longer in city preferences. We've been speaking with Commissioner Sundquist about how can we make sure our street cross-section recommendations are up to date and reflecting our sustainability needs or our Vision Zero desires. And so one advantage of a more quick cycle of updates, whether it's 10 years or 12 years, whatever it is we can keep more of the plans fresh so that we're not relying on plans that might be 20 years old and reconciling a 20-year-old plan with 2020 thinking, basically. And so I think that this would hopefully respond to a lot of requests we get, which is why can't we implement change in our thinking into our plans quicker than we can? So I don't know, Heather, any thoughts on the drive opening or other topics?
Yeah, it was really a great question, great example. I think, I guess I agree with where Brian came down on it, that something like that is probably way more detailed than what we would envision in these broad district plans. I think we really want to focus on the big picture, the land use building height, which is something that we could add another level of detail to what the generalized future land use map has now. And then also key transportation connections. I think that's something that our generalized future land use map and our comprehensive plan lack now. It's a detail that I think would be really important to add in these district plans. But beyond that, park locations, maybe major community facilities. But I think we would perhaps be doing ourselves a disservice and working at cross purposes if we got much more detailed than that, because then I think we would run into the same resource issue and the plan could take 5 years to do one of the districts. So I think keeping some uniformity and that broad sort of, again, citywide perspective, cover certain ingredients in these district plans. And if there's a real strong reason to do a more detailed sub-area plan, then we would hopefully have the resources to put into that as well. But I think, you probably see examples of this in staff reports every month at least, where there's a very nuanced recommendation in one of our sub-area plans. And I think it's important to ask, are those really appropriate? If it's something that's beyond the level of detail that our zoning covers, and really sets neighborhoods, across the city apart, there could be opportunities that make sense for a more detailed approach in sub-area planning. But there could be things that we've done for years that maybe aren't appropriate to cover in sub-area plans, and maybe lead to longer planning processes and a less equitable approach overall. And so, it's a challenge that I think we as staff are grappling with internally. But I really appreciate that you brought up that example, because I think it's a perfect example of something that I would see as too detailed for these broader planning efforts.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have any further questions, Commissioner Solheim?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cantrell.
Yeah, I have another question on the general future land use plans. And again, you're using these district plans as a mosaic for the comprehensive plan, and again, even doing 2 or 3 at the same time is going to take some time to do. And how do you get around the consistency? So if you come up with one concept of land use, and then 5 years into it, think, oh yeah, well we've come up with this new district or this new land use concept that we should have applied when we started. Do you go back then and amend those other districts that you've already completed, or how do you get at the consistency of the land uses over time, basically? So that's my question.
Okay, and I'm looking to see a raised hand for staff. I don't see one. Ms. Scouter, do you want to take? Oh, here.
Yeah, Brian.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Sure. So a great question, and it's not an easy thing. So as an example, about probably about 7 or 8 years ago, for our neighborhood development plans, like we were talking about the Reiner NDP areas on the periphery of the city, edge of the city, we had the same thing. And so we would go to make a map of like the east side neighbor development plans, basically from I-39 to the east. And we had so many different categories in our plans that the legend for this map would have about 30 items in it. And so you'd have to figure out like what's the brownish speckled thing, like trying to figure out what kind of Jelly Belly I'm eating right now. So we couldn't make a map even. And so we standardized our categories. We standardized them to fit within the comp plan. And then when we just updated our comp plan in 2018, they still fit in the comp plan. So you have to force yourself to restrict yourself to certain categories, but we could set forth certain categories that either those categories in our district plans then nest within the comp plan GFLU map, maybe 2 district categories nest within one comp plan category. Or you could just have whatever the district plans are, that is your map. That's the mosaic example. We could do 2 things. With our NDPs, we have about 2 land use categories in our NDPs that translate to one comp plan GFLU map category. That makes it easier to meet that consistency because the comp plan is the hard stop, and you just have to be sure you're consistent with that category. Mm-hmm. So there's two ways there. The downside is I would advocate for clarity. Clarity with the petitioners on Nelson Road trying to figure out the development process, clarity with all of our stakeholders. However we can simplify our process, I think would be beneficial, but we've set a template with the neighbor development plans where we've set categories. You can stick with the categories, or maybe we say, 10 years from now, we need to modify our categories. We could we just add a category on top, or we do a reshuffling, but we could probably figure that out with some sort of translation. But it has been helpful because if Tim Parks is reviewing a project in the Pioneer NDP or the Harriet Hills NDP, if we can make housing mix 3 mean the housing mix the same thing, that's very helpful for everyone involved to know what their parameters are.
Okay, thank you. That good answer.
Thank you, Commissioner. Did you have anything else?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Rummel.
Oh, thank you. So I'm still circling in my brain what first Mr. Clubb has talked about, and then Alder Heck also talked about, and that is how do we not just engage people who aren't property owners, but stop the displacement of people who are renters. Because what I see downtown, when you say, we need more density, that's just telling people who make less than $15 an hour, they got to find another place to live. And we don't face that gentrification of our planning very much face on. We say, we don't deal with, affordable housing. Well, okay, maybe legally we're limited. But as a policy making body, we need to be able to say how we're protecting people of all races and classes who want to live in our city, and they want to live all different places in our city, not just where it's, they can afford and maybe not, we know all that. And the other part of that whole thing is what Mr. Clubb had talked about. I think it was him that, we have these cultural resources in our downtown. And, when you say, we're going to have standardized building heights, to me, I hear that as telling a developer, it's fair game because city wants this, and just tear all that stuff out. It's not well taken care of anyway. So what's the difference? We're going to build better, safer housing. And then the Plan Commission often says, yeah, we agree. And we lose not only this workforce housing, but are part of our history. And so when we create these bigger districts, I want to make sure that we have some way where we want growth and we see density is important, but we also value how our built environment and how it's evolved over time, and try to protect parts of it and not displace people.
Thank you, Alder. Did you have anything further?
Oh, and one more thing, yeah. When I guess there's all these plans where, they exist, and when they start out, they don't have anybody living there. Whereas in the older parts of the city, there's people that live there and have like a say. They want to know, or they say, when did you start doing that? I just heard about it. All that stuff we hear, right? But the people out in the future, like the Nelson Roads of the world, they don't have a voice yet. So I don't know how we deal with that, but I think it's something we should acknowledge that we don't always have a voice of the customer yet in some places.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll just respond quickly. I think a lot of what you said has to do with choice, right? We want to definitely maximize the choices that people have and where they can live, how they can get around. I think the comprehensive plan really touches on that. And one of the things that we have to do as planners that I think is very tough and that you have to do as the Plan Commission is not only to listen to the voices of the people that live in areas now, but to think of the voices that aren't there yet. We face that in redeveloping areas. We face it in areas in the periphery of the city, like you mentioned, in the neighborhood development plans. But I think that is a really tough charge politically, and it's one that as plan commissioners and as staff, we have to keep carrying forward, is that we're thinking about residents that aren't there yet. We're thinking about maximizing choices and accommodating the growth that is happening. If we make a decision not to accommodate it, then it's just going to be tougher and tougher, and there will be fewer and fewer choices for folks as folks continue to either move to Madison or stay here. So I think a lot of what you said definitely resonates with me. And I think, yes, there are certainly distinctions between the peripheral plans and the plans in our sort of central city or even already developed areas with how that engagement happens. But one thing we always have to keep in mind, regardless of where it is in the city, is who's going to be there and what voices aren't we hearing and what do we still need to prepare for.
Thank you, Ms. Stouter. Alder Rummel, did you have anything else? No. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sundquist.
So thank you for that, Ms. Stouter, about the people who aren't here yet. I think that's a really important point, and I'm with you 100% on that, and something that we don't talk about probably enough. I'm pretty, glass half full on this whole approach for reasons that people have given. It is kind of weird that we have these sub-area plans in some places and not others. And I do think a more systematic approach could be really helpful. I guess a process question, and I'm sorry if you already addressed this, but when we do one of these district plans, would we then do a comp plan amendment? Would there be a formal comp plan amendment?
Mr. Grady, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, so I guess thinking through this on the fly here. So let's say we go this route and we create our first district plan. I think yes, when we would go through. I think it's likely that for each of these district plans, we rather than right now, we very rarely amend the comp plan GFLU map. And when we rarely, twice a decade, basically, maybe. In the case of the district plan, since these would be the comp plan, I think we would go through the notification procedures, notify adjacent municipalities, people that are on the interested parties registry, and we would consider that a comp plan update. And so we have our current GFLU map. If we adopt a district plan for this geography, that would replace the GFLU map in that area. And then we did the next one, we would do the same thing. And then if the whole mosaic is created, then with each subsequent one, we would probably just keep calling that a comp plan amendment, because that would be amending the GFLU map.
Okay.
So that's one, and that's something that other municipalities, city City of Fitchburg, other townships around us, we get notification all the time of comp plan amendments. We do not do that in the city of Madison, but with this process, I think we'd want to formalize that. It kind of goes to the clarity of one land use recommendation. If you put it as part of your comp plan, it's pretty clear what the recommendation is for a property.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Did you have any further questions, Commissioner Sundquist?
Yes. So I think that bears thinking about how that'll work, and I look forward to that. I think it would be, if there's going to be a schedule so that people can know when. Right now, it's 10 years, and they can kind of count on it staying the same for 10 years. And if it's going to change in 3 years, then maybe that needs to be noted in some meta document, whether that's the comp plan itself or something, so that there's some, so people know. Just some observations based on the previous comments. Really totally agree with everybody, Alder Rummel, Alder Heck, staff, who have talked about engaging non-homeowners or other people who are traditionally not involved. I think that's a tough one, and I don't know that this makes it better or worse. I heard both people worrying about it and staff suggesting maybe it's going to be better. I don't know. I think it's just really, really hard when you're a renter. And the average renter stays in a place for like a year and a half, I think and are you going to invest your time to go work on a plan that might take a year to work out, and if it does, you're never going to see anything out of it for years after that? It's just hard. The incentives are just not there for a lot of renters. And I'm thinking to myself, when I rented, I moved around all the time. My mother once showed me her address book and how many pages of stuff she had for me after I'd gotten out of college, how many different addresses I'd had. So it's tough. It's tough when we try to engage people to vote, and all kinds of things. So I think that's a different question than the scale of these plans, and but one that we will probably never fully solve just because of those structural issues of people's incentives, but that we have to do better and continue to do other ways of outreach to people in that category to try to get at least their interests represented, which goes to the Stouters. Again, I guess that's not even like the future residents. That's like the current residents who aren't being heard because people who are homeowners and long-term residents are kind of dominating. And I guess one last thing, and that came out of the conversation from Commissioner Solheim's question about West Wash, this notion of how much stuff can we pack into these plans? And it's not just the land use maps and the stuff we're talking about tonight. Madison's plans are just full of stuff. I've been working in this little side group on sustainability, and one of our exercises was to try to look at the comp plan, the sustainability plan, the energy plan, try to put them all together. And it turns out the sustainability plan had 500 things in it, 500 different items. And it's well, that's not a plan. That's somebody got in a room and everybody put their stickies up and nobody took any down. And in some cases, they didn't even put the ones that said the same things together. So it's hey, I think I just read this in the other chapter. So, maybe the driveways on West Wash is really important to capture somewhere. Somebody thought so, and maybe it is. Maybe that's a bad example, but I was thinking of all these overlaps and nuance in some of these plans that somebody thought, somebody went to a meeting and got their idea put in the plan and nobody told them they didn't like it. And so it got put in there and the person went home thinking they'd really done something. And then it sits there for a while, and then it comes up and we have to decide on something, and people are like, why and how? And this conflicts with this other part of the plan and everything else. I was struggling to think of a really good example, but I mean, maybe the closest I can come up with is the Cottage Grove Road, the Krupp project recently, where, when I read that plan, that sub-area plan, it said something about an activity center there. Clearly, a lot of the people who went to that meeting thought that meant keep the strip mall that was still there and don't change it. And I mean, that's not what I read in it, but that is what they took out of it. And so there's always going to be like debates about stuff like that. And I don't know. And when you privilege such minute planning, it really goes against the grain of future residents or the people who aren't being heard, because it locks in, and we saw it there. It seemed to lock in the status quo that the people who participated, who were homeowners, the long-term residents, I guess, kind of wanted, and we gave them a lot of deference in that process. And it was against the future, the future residents of our city who didn't have any place to live. So this is maybe a bit of a tangent, but I think it's really worthwhile in this conversation to think about how much of this really minute stuff should be in these plans, just for the workability, for who it's privileging, and those main things. So that's what I got to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Alder Heck.
Thank you. My statement, I'm not sure if it's a question, actually kind of follows from what Commissioner Sundquist was just saying. I'm thinking that if we did adopt these bigger districts and the process that we're talking about, the rolling updates, that the power, and I might regret saying this, the power will lie with those who can best advocate for a sub-area plan. Some, I don't know if there need to be criteria, but not only does the squeaky wheel get the grease, but the squeaky alder gets the grease. And somebody, this is the part I'll regret bringing up, but I talk to planning staff almost every day. And I have good relationships with so many different staff members that if I can imagine my advocating for a particular type of sub-area plan and succeeding more often than other alders, perhaps some other alders. And so I'm wondering about how, not only how sub-area plans could be kept, I don't want to say under control, but to their best use. And also, how do the many sub-area plans we have now, that many of them, which are so excellent, but maybe they're, not appropriate, all of them, but how do we decide what pieces of those get saved as we move down this path, if we do? And I'm just interested in how we might proceed on both those areas.
I'd like to respond to that. I think the first part, I think, is one of the most challenging pieces of at least our internal staff discussion. That, I think we want to acknowledge up front that if we move in this direction, we must take something else off of our plates, right? We must do fewer sub-area plans that aren't these district plans. And so I think developing those criteria is absolutely important. We've talked a lot internally as a staff about really focusing on equity as a guiding lens into where we would do, other sub-area planning efforts, and also the redevelopment areas that we mentioned. If we get a sudden Oscar Mayer closure that demands, quick attention in the next couple of years to completely reimagine a key site, maybe that's enough criteria to move forward. Now, I will tell you that in my short relatively short term in this role, I mean, I've had to say no many, many, many times to planning efforts. And the rubric that I think we've used as a team with some success is, well, where are we? Well, first of all, is it in a resolution somewhere? Is it in a plan recommendation that we need to follow up on and create something more detailed, which, as Chair Zellers knows, we haven't been able to keep up with all of those many, 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 many recommendations. But I think a rubric that we've used is, is this area one that's facing a lot of change, or do the people who live in this area need attention for capacity building and for community services that they may need? And we've used those questions as kind of guides, and we've continued steadily with the CDBG planning efforts that Linda Horvath talked about this evening, and I think that those would continue into the future. But we probably would need to say no to, plans that would take a look at a certain small neighborhood and do a detailed design effort that exceeds what would be in the district plan. I can't think of a fantastic example right now of what that would be, but I think moving into the broader geographies gets us away from very small scale interests as well. And so I think that can help us. But you're absolutely right that we need to develop clear criteria for, well, what are our list of other sub-area plans that we're doing. And right now, I think we would say that we'd like to focus on low and moderate income communities and focus on shorter term action-oriented plans that are really relevant to a lot of the folks who may only live in a place for a couple of years. And then with your second question, that's another major challenge. And that question had to do with what elements of the existing sub-area plans will we carry forward? What I would envision the first time around that we take on the district plans, if we move in this direction, we would need to piece together all of those underlying sub-area plans, go through recommendation by recommendation, and as Brian Grady mentioned, elevate the ones that are appropriate to fit into a district plan. So anything land use, building height, we might be able to pull out and actually just plug into the district plan. But other recommendations, we may need to decide, do we let go of these or do we need to continue moving them forward? And I think, we would definitely want to bring those questions to the Plan Commission in, how is this plan going to move forward? Maybe it's a red line version that crosses out things that we don't feel are pertinent or can otherwise be swallowed into a district plan. But maybe there are other key elements that we need to move forward. Our plans right now are so different from one another. They're so nuanced that there's not going to be an easy approach to that question. But I think it's definitely something we're grappling with as a staff team.
Thank you, Ms. Stouter. Did that answer your observations and questions, Alder Hecht? And did you have anything else?
I look for if we go this route, I look forward to seeing it in actual process and implementation, and it'll be tricky. But thanks.
Okay, I do not see any more raised hands. I would just like to say, I think that this has been a terrific discussion. And thank you to all the plan commissioners for the great thinking on this, the questions, the thought, and thank you to staff for the good measured responses. And I do know that this is early in the thinking, and that there's a lot more thinking and figuring out to do. But thank you to the staff and to the commissioners, and I'm sure we'll be seeing another iteration or phase as we go forward. And I would look to staff. Are there any questions that you have or observations that you would like to make? I see Alder Rummel would like to say something.
Thank you. I just was thinking about, we didn't really touch on like how we're going to be annexing like the town of Madison and the town of Blooming Grove. And I know so when we did the Darba Worthington Starkweather plan, we did invite those neighbors. And I know as we move forward with the town of Madison, with the mayor's recent budget and planning around TIF, that we're going to try and do some of that. But that made me think that we didn't once mention tax incremental financing as a planning tool that is layers in some of this stuff too. And I just wanted to call it out. And then I wanted to remind former Alder Zellers of a plan that I usually stored plans, but some plans I just think, why are we doing this? And one of them was that Yahara Parkway plan. I was so happy that one sort of died a nice quiet death. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Staff, anything? Did you get what you were looking for?
Absolutely. I really appreciate this conversation. And yes, it's early. We have a lot of work to do. And we have a lot to do to think about how to lay this out to not only you again, but other policymakers as this moves forward. As sort of a quick aside, I did want to touch on a question that Alder Rummel just asked, because I think it's a great one. For things like TIF, for land banking, for things where the city's really taking more of an action-oriented approach, I think those are great ingredients to a different sub-area planning effort that wouldn't necessarily be covered in these district plans. Again, this is basic framework, land use, building height, transportation infrastructure, but the how we get there, if we're focused on home ownership for households who are people of color in South Madison, that's a policy action-oriented plan that the city can focus on. If it's land banking and TIF in order to promote some of that or to promote more housing opportunities in South Madison, that's something that I think warrants a separate effort. And so, then we're working with our interagency partners in economic development and other agencies to really move forward with a more action, shorter term planning and implementation effort. So I think TIF is a really great thing that you brought up, and I just wanted to respond to that. But back to the big picture question, I did want to just open it up for any last comments that Brian or Linda, Urvashi, Jeff, or Jewel might have to share. I want to thank them for all of their work to do the research and pull this idea together. Thank you. But if there's anything else that you want to share with the Plan Commission.
Seeing no raised hands, I will assume, somebody just popped up with one. Linda Horvath.
Yes, I just wanted to thank the Plan Commission as well. These questions have really kind of sparked a lot of thinking in my own head, and I can't wait to get back to our group and talk through some of your questions. I think the research that we did with other cities is going to be particularly, provides good guidance for us as we try to answer some of the questions that you had and develop particularly those criteria to move forward with. And other things as well. So thank you again for all of your great questions and the discussion. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Horvath. Okay, then moving on. The next item on our agenda is business by members. Any business by members? Seeing no raised hands, the next item is the Secretary's report.
Okay, thank you, Chair Zellers. I will keep this brief. Want to remind everyone that if you haven't done it already, please fill out the statement of interest form from the city. And if any of you have a question about that, just drop me an email and I can send you it again. Let's see, the recent Common Council actions are all listed here. They're either referrals or, as expected, followed the Plan Commission recommendations. For upcoming matters on January 11th, I did want to mention that the proposed amendment to the Triangle Monona Bay Neighborhood Plan will actually be referred to the January 25th meeting. That's the only one that's out of place here, and that's based on a CDA referral. They'll be hearing it at their January meeting rather than tomorrow night. Also on January 11th, we'll be seeing a rezoning proposal on the far northeast side, 4205 Portage Road. We'll be seeing the Truman Olson site, 1402 South Park Street, mixed-use building proposed on that site. And then the other one that I'll mention for the 11th is the return of 817 to 821 Williamson Street, a new slightly smaller redevelopment proposal for that site. And then looking forward to January 25th, Madison Yards will be back with an amended general development plan and specific implementation plan for Block 2 of their site. And then the Children's Museum downtown has an interesting proposal for a partial demolition of the building to create a new outdoor exhibition space. And those are the two I'll mention on the 25th. Oh, sorry. The first one on that list, 5501 Mineral Point Road. This is a major development proposal on the northern portion of University Research Park, which is right on the bus rapid transit line on the west side. So a few major things on the 25th that we'll see. And with that,
One question. I don't see on here anything about the Lake Street appeal. Did you want to mention that?
Oh, sure. The applicant for the I'll mention two appeals. Appeals will be going to the council, appeals of your decisions on November 23rd. One was the placing on file of the demolition and conditional use at 619 to 621 North Lake Street. And then the other was the approval of the 3-story mixed-use building on Hammersley Road that had petitioners who live nearby or own property nearby file an appeal on that decision. Both of those were unanimous decisions at the Plan Commission level, but they'll be taken up by the council on likely January 19th.
Thank you. Did you have anything else then, Ms. Stouter?
I didn't. I did just want to say that we'll see each other again in 2 nights, and looking forward to the discussion about building more consistency between our zoning and our historic districts and the plan recommendations within them. So thank you in advance for taking a look at that material, and we'll see you and hopefully many of the Landmarks Commission members as well on Wednesday evening. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Stouter. Yes, there's some pretty complex kinds of material for Wednesday night. So I would urge you to take some time to digest that before our meeting on Wednesday. Are there any other announcements? Seeing none, then I would be looking for a motion to, Yes, Commissioner.
I guess I just recently read that Alder Rommel is not going to be running for the city council. And I guess that saddens me because obviously you've been a leader on the council and a strong voice on the Plan Commission as well, and a point of view that I will certainly miss here. And I think that you serve your district very well, and you've been again an excellent member on the Plan Commission, and I will definitely miss your input. And although we not always agree, I do appreciate your point of view and your discussion, and you are an excellent leader, and I'll certainly miss you a lot, Marcia.
Thank you, Commissioner Cantrell. Anything else?
No.
Then I would be looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Commissioner Cantrell, seconded by Commissioner Solheim. Unless I see a raised hand to object, motion passes. Thank you all very much.
Bye.
See you in 2 days.